Election Yard heads to Ohio today to look more closely at the Senate race going on there. This is considered one of the most critical races anywhere in the country, with the GOP looking to take advantage of a tough Senate map for Democrats and win control of the Senate. First, the basics. The incumbent here is Sherrod Brown, a Democrat who was first elected to be Ohio Senator in 2006. He has been the state's senior senator for well over a decade, since George Voinovich called it quits, but he's not the dean of Ohio's congressional delegation because Marcy Kaptur has been in Congress since 1983. Still, he has been around for a very long time. In 2018, the most recent good Democratic midterm year, Brown won his third term by beating a GOP congressman, Jim Renacci, by almost 7 points. Even as Ohio's political leanings were starting to change, this was never really a race. You would not know it just by looking at the county map in Ohio, as most are deep red, but keep in mind that a lot of those red counties in the middle are quite small and underpopulated. Brown won basically every densely populated county that matters. This becomes clearer when we label where all the big cities in Ohio are. Those metro counties are all blue, and that's where Brown won his re-election. 2024, however, will be no walk in the park. It's a presidential year and his senatorial colleague is on the other party's ticket. The GOP is running Bernie Moreno, a businessman and a son of immigrants who made his fortune running auto dealerships. Some notes on the Brown campaign. First, as many of you may well know, he is the last of the Ohio Democrats, almost literally. He is the only Democrat currently in any statewide elected office in Ohio and has been since the 2010 election. Barack Obama would carry the state for a second time in 2012, but other than that, the Democrats are going straight down the tubes with the exception of Brown. The last time Democrats had a decent year in Ohio at the state level was 2006, when Brown was first elected. Brown's political career has been lengthy. He was elected to his first office back in 1974. With one brief hiatus, he's been in office in Ohio ever since, serving at various levels of government and in both houses of Congress. To say he is a known quantity at this point is probably an understatement. Nevertheless, Brown is hanging on despite Ohio getting redder and no longer being considered a swing state. This is after over a decade of being considered the swing state. But I'm going to need you to put that all aside for a moment because Brown's popularity has largely transcended the changes in the state's electorate, even though he's definitely to the left of the state's political center of gravity. Therefore, do not be surprised if Sherrod Brown pulls this off on November 5th and goes back to Washington for a fourth term. As for Bernie Moreno, it's now or never to beat Sherrod Brown for him and the GOP. Should Brown win, he may or may not run again in 2030 at age 77, but they're unlikely to get a more favorable opportunity to defeat him. It's a presidential year, Trump is almost certainly going to win the state, and MAGA voters will ostensibly turn out. If Brown weren't running, this seat probably flips. However, if they can't beat him now with everything going their way, it's not going to be a great look. Though as we know, there would be legitimate reasons behind Brown winning that we just reviewed. In terms of fundraising, it's not going Moreno's way nearly as much as it is for Brown. The senator hauled in tens of millions in the third quarter of this year, blowing away Moreno's numbers, and he was already well behind Brown in that department. Moreno may yet win the race, but he's going to have to do so with a lot less funding. To that end, Moreno's favorite word this November might be coattails. Trump could win Ohio by enough, with a big enough turnout to sweep Moreno into office behind him. Given that he's won the state by 8 points twice, that's not the most unreasonable ask in the world. However, for reasons that we will get into in a moment, it's not that simple. As of October 3rd, the date we made this video, this was the most recent public unaffiliated poll available. The New York Times and Siena College survey from late September. Brown led Moreno by a margin of 47 to 43%. You will, however, notice that there is a big gap in between the two bars. That's because this race has an unusually high 10% undecideds. Now, keep in mind this is only one poll, but because this is a respected pollster coming back with a rather large undecided number, we decided to look at the crosstabs and try to get a sense of who these undecided voters are. We will show you the URL at the end of this video and post the link at electionyard.com for those who want to dig into the crosstabs themselves. Looking at those crosstabs, we were able to come up with a generalized profile of the leanings of these voters. Most of them were women, and voters under the age of 45 tended to have a higher rate of being undecided than those 45 and older. The vast majority of them are not college educated. A plurality of these undecideds live in rural areas, a narrow plurality supports Trump in the presidential race, and another narrow plurality didn't vote at all in 2020. Finally, most consider consider themselves independents or other, and very few are Democrats. You can read a couple things from this information, and again, let's stress that this is only one poll. On the surface, these undecided voters look like they might lean Republican friendly. By no means is it a strong lean, but more support Trump than Harris, which is probably good news for Moreno, but there are two catches. First, a decent number of these undecideds did not vote in 2020, whether because they weren't old enough or just didn't care to do so. Assuming most were old enough, the 2020 election was a high-intensity political event with almost 75% turnout in Ohio. One wonders if that election didn't get some of these undecideds to turn out. Will this election? The only way to find out is on election day. The second catch comes when you look even further into the Times crosstabs. Independents are holding it even, though with many of these undecided non-2020 voters holding out. However, look at how the partisan splits hold up. Though fewer Democrats will vote in Ohio than Republicans, Brown is holding the Democratic vote together almost completely, 96 to 1% with 3 undecided. But Moreno can't say the same, with 81% of Republicans voting for him, but 13% of them crossing over to vote for Brown. This right here is why Brown is still in this race with a genuine shot to win. About 1 in 8 Republicans is supporting Brown, according to this poll, while virtually no Democrats are voting for Moreno. So assuming for a moment that this poll is perfectly accurate, Moreno would need the undecideds to break about 70 to 30 for him to win, assuming all of them vote. Do you want to take that bet? I don't after looking at the crosstabs. Some of them surely won't. And if Moreno is behind, that's fewer votes for him to catch up. For Brown, to use a football analogy, if he's in position to win and some of these undecideds that Moreno needs don't show up, that gives Brown a shorter field to go kick the game-winning field goal. When you're losing an election, an undecided staying home is harmful. Not as harmful as them showing up to vote for the other guy, but it makes your job harder. With all that said, there are dueling currents at play in this particular Ohio race, so for now, we are still considering this a toss-up. It's our only Senate toss-up as of October 3rd, but check out electionyard.com to see if this has changed. Sherrod Brown is far from a lost cause in this race. In fact, some of the fundamentals of this race actually favor him. If only one of Jon Tester or Sherrod Brown win their Senate races, it's going to be Brown. With that said, there appear to still be a good number of undecideds for this late in the game, so anything can still happen in October as early voting gets underway. One of my main takeaways, and something I'll be looking for in the exit polls and on election night in general, is how well the Democrats hold their vote together. So far, it looks like Brown is going to get almost universal Democratic support, but will Moreno hold the GOP vote together? There will be some Republicans that vote for Trump and Brown, but how many? And will Brown be able to remain competitive with independents as he is? There are lingering question marks, which is why we still have this as a toss-up, but this should definitely keep your attention on election night. For more election 2024 predictions and previews, visit electionyard.com, and our social media links are on the screen.